All right. Make sure you guys are getting or taking notes. Maybe if you're good. If you're a good kid.
Don't give it to him. Here.
Okay, so we are still solving equations today. We're gonna learn a new method. So before we get started, I want to say.
But it's all in my head.
So before you guys get started, I want to say today's. It might look like a lot at the very beginning, but I need you to trust me. It's not that bad.
Can you trust me?
Is there a shortcut?
No, but it's really not that bad. It's maybe a little time consuming, but it's not very hard. I think this is easier than the stuff you
My
did
worst
yesterday.
enemy is time.
Personally, I actually like this one way
Do we
more.
only
than
have
the
like 3 problems from homework?
No, but we'll see. Okay, so today we are going to learn what's called the quadratic formula. So yesterday we did completing the square, right? We also did AC factoring, we did end-to-middle factoring. And we did this whole thing in order to find our solutions, right? To find our zeros. So the one we're going to use today is the quadratic formula. So the quadratic formula is nice in that you can always use this. So you can always use quadratic formula. So remember, like before, if I had a 2x squared plus 3x plus 1, I would have to AC factor this.
Sorry, wrong classroom.
What?
Can I use your headphones?
No.
The crusty ones.
Hey, this is only for the class,
Oh,
Golky.
man.
Remember last time when you didn't let me borrow your headphones?
They don't matter?
You said they're
No,
all-
it
The
doesn't.
crusty ones.
I wanted to make
You
it
can't
fun.
bring the good ones.
No!
Don't bring them.
Hey, you have to take the crusty ones.
You have to take the
My
crusty
headphones,
ones.
I give them to who I want. And right
No,
now,
take
you
the
guys
big
are being
ones,
loud
take the big
obnoxious.
Yeah, because they're bad.
You listen better.
My parents.
Alright, so quadratic formula is nice because it doesn't matter what you have, you can use the quadratic formula. So I don't care what A is, I don't care what B is, I don't care what C is. You can always use the quadratic formula. The reason we learned all the other ones is because the quadratic formula can be kind of time consuming. It's not super difficult, but it can take a while.
Goki, are you recording?
Yes.
Oh.
Okay,
Why would you
so
say-
our quadratic formula is this right here, negative B,
Just let me.
and this thing right here, that is a plus minus. And that means you actually have two problems. You actually have a plus, and then you have a second one with a minus. We'll talk about this later.
I hate this one.
Guys, come on, focus. Focus.
You gotta choose.
Moses, around, shush. Okay. So our quadratic equation, negative b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c, and everything is divided by 2a. Turn around, come on.
I'm trying to listen to you. See that?
You don't need to face backwards.
This is really.
So in our quadratic equation, everywhere we see an a, a b, and a c, we're going to replace it with actual numbers. And in quadratic equation, it's always minus 4 right here, and it's always a 2 times on the bottom right there. There's always that.
Why?
Got it.
It's just how the formula works. I could show you a proof,
Why?
but it's kind of long and obnoxious. So
Why?
I trust you, Goki.
thanks, I appreciate it.
Hey, Golky.
You trust her, but you don't trust me?
No.
What the hell?
Okay, so I'm going to use the quadratic equation on 2x squared plus 3x plus 1. So in this, I have an a, b, and a c. So I'm going to replace every a I see in my equation with 2, every b I see with 3, and every c with 1.
Would you like us to rewrite it?
Yep, so you're going to rewrite it. So I'm going to go negative b, negative 3, plus or minus square root of, and I'm going to put in a,
Wait,
Three.
it doesn't matter if it's plus or minus.
this one right here. So
So
we'll
it'd be
talk about
plus,
this
right?
later. This plus minus right here means I actually have 2 problems. But we're not going to worry about it right now. At the very end, we'll look at this plus minus. Mhm. So I plugged in 3 in for my b, and because it's a negative 3 now. Plus minus the square root of b squared, and then minus 4 times a is 2, times c is 1, and everything is divided by 2 times a is 2.
Bless you, child.
Okay, so we filled this in. We need to go through and start actually doing some work. And what we're going to do is use Desmos for most of this.
Is it hard?
No, we just got to fill it into Desmos. It actually used to be a lot worse before Desmos because you had to do it a piece at a time. Like, for example, you had to do 3 squared, and then you had to do minus 4 times 2 times 1 like individually.
What?
So I'm going to go through and I'm going to start doing some math in here. So -3 is just going to be there. I'm going to go plus minus again. Everything is divided by 2 times 2 is really 4, right? The biggest thing is this whole square root right here. I'm going to plug straight into Desmos. So let me, I gotta grab Desmos, I have to drag it over. I'm going to plug this entire square root into Desmos. And 95% of the time you're going to get a decimal, which is fine. You don't always get one, but most of the time you do. Why? Not that bad, man. There we go. We got some Desmos going.
It's
Oh,
1.
I got the answer. Okay, I got it. I got it.
Alright, so let's plug it in. We're going to get
What
it.
is it, Jace?
Right, go over there.
So we're going to do the square root. And when we do the b squared, make sure you put the b in parentheses. So I'm going to go parentheses 3 squared. And then minus 4 times, let me see what, a was 2 times c is 1. And this is one of the times, so it doesn't always happen. It almost always, but not always. It's almost always a decimal. Maybe not so much today, but most of the time it will be. So I plugged the entire square root in, and I got 1.
She make you squeal on it, right?
So -3 plus or minus 1 divided by 4. If I gotta tell anybody to be quiet again, it's a strike.
Is that the answer?
Go, can I
No.
move?
No.
You added and
We're almost there though. Alright,
You added subtraction.
so I have
Almost.
a -3 plus minus 1 divided by 4. So this plus minus, we haven't done anything with it yet, right? So, the plus minus means we have 2 problems. Alright, both of you guys are getting a strike. Because you're both screwing around. That's a strike. No. You're gonna keep talking, it's gonna be a second strike.
I won't.
And you'll be here after school. So quit screwing around, we got to get this plan.
Yeah, I'm gonna play chess.
This is on YouTube, guys.
Okay, so this plus minus here, it means we have 2 problems. We actually have 2 problems. But we use it because it saves time. It doesn't really come into effect until the end. So I'm going to have 2 problems. I'm going to have -3 plus 1 divided by 4. And I'm going to have -3 minus 1 divided by 4. So, everything is exactly the same until this very end. And once I get to this very end, I split it into 2 things. One is going to have a plus in the middle, the other one has a minus in the middle. And then I just have to go through and actually do -3 plus 1, which is -2, right? -2 divided by 4 is -0.5. On my other one, -3 minus 1 is -4. Divided by 4 is -1. These are my 2 solutions. I have x equals -0.5 and -1.
I remember this.
Those are my 2 solutions.
So, and then that's our answer?
Mm-hmm.
I
That's your answer to this one.
Honestly,
Yeah.
One.
Okay, so we split it into 2 problems, right? Because I have a plus minus. That means I have -3 plus 1, and then I have a second one that's -3 minus 1. So if we didn't do the plus minus, we'd have to write both of them out the long
I
ways.
get it.
But, okay, so in this problem, there's a -3 in front on both of these, right?
Yeah.
And there's a 4 on the bottom. So because they're exactly the same, until this very last step, we just kind of combine them together, so they're not that much work. Yes, Moses.
Okay, so I'm gonna step with the -3 plus minus outside.
Yeah.
Of the square thing.
Square root, yeah. Right here.
So you're supposed to find the inside.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
So we plug
Just
the
type
entire
in
square root
Desmos.
into Desmos.
That's all you gotta do.
How would you
this
type
is
in
a
Desmos?
thing.
Just like
You
that.
see that little square root thing
No,
on the bottom?
Like-
That's how
like
you
what do you
got
mean?
the plus 1.
Like the
Like the-
last part?
Yeah.
For the last part, you just go -3 plus 1, right? You get -2,
There you go.
and then you just go -2 divided by 4. You get -0.5. I just did it in my head to save some time. Yes, Kitty.
you can still do it like on here though.
You could. Yeah. Yes, Delia. Let's crush.
How'd you get the plus 1?
Because
I mean, type this.
that is so. The first part is -3, right? this whole square root, you plug it into Desmos, and you get just 1. So instead of writing out or doing this a step at a time, I just went 1. Okay. And then when we get to the plus minus, we split it into 2 problems. One with a plus, one with a minus. So we're going to go through, and we're just going to practice this. This is all we're doing today. Because it's kind of a long process. And what's up?
It just probably like the 5th one, so I mean.
Skip how we already got home and done.
Okay.
Kofi's like,
It's not even on.
yeah, that's what wait till I get there, that's what Kofi said.
Usually.
Okay. So we're going to keep going, and we're going to solve using our quadratic equation. So setup's the same. Whatever.
What question is that?
Yeah.
Really?
You just asked about the
Find
mark.
our superior.
Okay. So on this, we are going to fill in A, B, and C. I know that kind of looks a little weird, but we'll fill it in. All right. So I'm going to go negative B. But let's look. On here, B is negative 17. C is negative 4. So I'm going to go negative 17 when I fill it in. Because my formula is negative B, and B is a negative. So it will be a positive. I'm just not doing that yet. So a negative will be a positive, but I'm doing that on my next step. If you want to do it now, great. I'm just not going to skip the steps. Okay, then I'm going to keep filling it in. Plus, minus, square root. And inside here, I'm going to go negative 17 squared. That's a terrible one.
I'm 16.
Yeah, it's good. And then minus 4 times A is 16 times C is negative 4. And then the whole thing is divided by 2 times A is 16. So all we did was fill in A, B, and C. And after we fill it in, we're going to go through and start doing the math. So negative 17 we just talked about. That changes to a positive 17. Plus, minus, I'll plug this whole square root in just a second. I know it's going to be divided by 2 times 16 is 32. Alright, now let's plug this whole square root in right here. So the square root of negative 17 squared. Square root of negative 17 squared minus 4 times A was 16 times C was negative 4. So we get 23.3. 23.3. I just plugged the entire square root in, 23.3. Alright, so I'm going to go back here, plus minus 23.3. Okay, now that I did all of that math, I split it into 2 problems. My first one's going to have a plus, second one's going to have a minus. So I'm going to have 17 plus 23.3 divided by 32. And I'm going to have 17 minus 23.3 divided by 32. And I'm going to have to plug these into Desmos because I don't feel like doing those right now. So the first one, 17 plus 23.3 divided by 32. There we go. 17 plus 23.3, and we get 40.3. If you can do this in one step too, that's fine. You don't have to do your steps now. So I'm going to have 40.3 divided by 32. Plug that into Desmos. 40.3 divided by 32. And 1.3. We'll add it to 1.3. You can only do, or you could do just one decimal today if you'd like. If you want to do more, that's fine. But you don't have to. So I'm going to round that to 1.3. 1.3 is my first answer. And we're doing the same thing basically, but this time on the bottom part. So 17 minus 23.3 this time around. I'm just going to change that to a minus right there. And I get negative 6.3. Negative 6.3 divided by 32. Okay, Darian?
We got it?
Yeah.
Alright, and then I'm going to plug negative 6.3 divided by 32 in Desmos. Right there. negative 6.3. And my second answer is negative 0.22.
What?
Because I rounded it.
I gotta put 16.
I think you put 30. Did you put 32 on top?
No. Isn't 17 minus 26.3 the same thing as
No.
negative 6.3?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I did.
And then you divide it by 32.
Yeah.
You got it on your phone. Child.
Oh, so you see how it's divided by only on that piece? If you're gonna do it this way, you have to go like, see like that?
That's why I did it a step at a time. Alright, we get those two answers. And that's it. We don't need to do anything else. It's a little more time consuming, but honestly,
There
I like
we
it
go.
way better than completing the square.
I like this one.
Because it's just one whole process that you can go through. And you could use this every time. Alright, you guys are going to help me out on this one. So Greg, start us off. What's A, what's B, what's C?
Fudge.
3 is A,
Yep.
3x squared is A, negative 4x is B, and then negative 7 is C.
Yeah. And it's just the numbers for A, B, and C. We don't need the X's. Okay? So, Beto, when I plug in my B, and for negative B, what's that going to look like? The 3x squared minus 4x. Bottom right.
4 plus minus.
Yeah. So it's 4, right? Because B is negative 4. If I have a negative 4, that will change to a positive 4. Alright, then I'm going to go plus minus square root of, and then, Gabe, what's this, what's inside the square root going to look like? So I got the parenthesis, right? What's going to go inside there?
Negative 4.
Negative 4 squared, and then minus 4 times what, Moses?
7, negative 7.
And?
And
Wait, what?
I don't know,
You've got the
I'm
A.
on a different step.
Minus 4 times A times C. So you did 4 times C, but we need our A in there. So Moses said 4 times C times A, which doesn't, in the order you multiply in these three doesn't matter. So he did C times A instead of A times C, but you're going to get the same answer. So it doesn't matter. And then the whole thing is going to be divided by what, Adelia?
Divided by 2 and 3.
2 times 3?
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. We're going to have to go through and start simplifying. We already did the negative 4 to get positive 4. And then we have plus minus. And let's see, 2 times 3 on the bottom there is 6. Ivory, did you do the square root yet?
Nope.
Alright, can you do the square root for us?
What the? Someone else do it.
Square. Minus 4 times. Got it.
Okay.
10.
Wait, 10. What's up, Jason?
I got 100.
It doesn't matter either way. You forgot the square root in front.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
I keep forgetting the
Yeah.
square root.
So just do square root
Square
100
root.
and it'll get your thing. Yeah. So you're right, you just forgot square root. No big.
Square.
Alright, Magi, what am I doing next?
You are. What would you just do though? You go plus or minus the thing. You go 4 plus 10 divided by 6, and then you go 4 minus 10 divided by 6.
Perfect.
And you go through.
And then we have to go through and start solving. So Jace, what's 4 plus 10?
Oh, 14?
14, right? And then what's 14 divided by 6, Jace?
I got 2.3 repeated.
2.3. Ashlyn, what's the 4 minus 10 down here?
Negative 6.
And what's negative 6 divided by 6?
Negative 1.
Perfect. Those are our two answers. X equals 2.3 repeating and -1. Pretty good, guys. Pretty good. All right. Yep. All right. I'll have you guys do this one right here in the box. I want you to solve using the quadratic equation.
And if we do really well, can we do the extra ticket?
Maybe. There might be one more I go over real quick, but we'll just go over it. Depends on how good you guys do.
Alright, you guys.
And I'll put the equation back on here so you guys can look at it without flipping back and forth. It is -b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c. Everything is divided by 2 times a. When you guys get into algebra 2, you'll probably have that equation memorized.
Algebra 2. Yeah. Is it hard?
Yeah. It's part of this.
Also, we have science next period? Alright. Sure. Maybe the whole class is bad.
Why?
So they can review and all that.
What?
S class 2. It's gonna be fun, guys.
What? Oh, your square root only is going around. Okay, so here, go over here, delete the square root. That was okay. Yeah, type it in again, because stuff got put outside the square root. So just
Oh,
start
whoops.
over again.
I didn't mean to pie that.
That was another bit.
Go ahead.
When you type it in. So go square root,
Alright.
and then put it in parentheses.
Dude.
Like that, and then do your squared, and then -4 times. Okay, so you see how everything's on the inside? So that's what you want. So before up here, see how your square root wasn't quite big enough?
Yeah.
So it threw you off. So make sure everything's on the inside.
But now when we go.
Because do it individually now. Yeah. So don't, because remember how we had the plus minus? So don't do it all at once. So that was 76, right? So write it 76. And then -34 plus minus. Okay. And then the whole thing is divided by what? So don't skip around. It's like 2 times. So you're gonna have. There you go. Now split into your G problems and plug it into decimals. Yeah. Good. Easy. So same thing here. You see how your square root isn't going over everything? So you're gonna have to type it in again, because you want your square root to be over the top of everything. You gotta go down here, and you type it in. Don't hit a space or anything. I'm trying to hit spaces. Type it in like you did, but don't hit a space.
Ow.
That's right, I did it in a space.
Yep. And you see how it's going over the top? Still, that's what you want. So I don't know what happened before. Maybe you accidentally clicked out of it or something. Have a great day. So remember, as you guys go through these, when you type it into Desmos, make sure your square root is around everything. like on this one right here, my square root is around everything. You don't want it to stop right here after your square. You want it around everything. So be careful when you type it in.
Are you done?
Yeah.
3.6 and negative 1.4.
I got that too.
Wait,
Except I got.
Yeah.
You
will
got
this still count?
Repeating?
Because
Yeah.
it's actually 2.6. It's a 7 times 5.
What'd you get?
Mine's more right.
No. What's more right? 3.6 repeating or 3.7?
3.7 is wrong.
Well, because the 7.
Don't forget to divide it by.
It's what you're supposed to round up anyways, because the 6 is higher than 5.
Oh!
Okay, start filling in numbers.
Because it's
Haven't you heard
3.6 can you round up?
5,
So it'll be 7 actually, not 6. But it could be both.
What's more right? 3.666666667?
It's 34.
Wouldn't it be 1.5 and not 1.4 though?
Quit, devil's negative.
So it's a negative b, right? So put another negative on top.
I got negative 0.2, negative 0.2.
Okay, so I go plus.
You didn't do it right.
Redo it.
And keep filling in numbers.
Don't even answer out loud, man. We will not go straight past.
Maybe I'm the only one right.
Maybe you're not.
Maybe you're not.
Minus 4.
I think that's happened once in my entire lifetime. Not to me, but somebody else. Somebody else was right and the whole class was wrong.
And the whole thing is divided by.
The teacher.
No, Dominic. Yeah, it was Dominic was the only one right. Did you know? What?
He said Tom would have 34, right?
Oh my.
And she did it. And it's
Okay,
oh, yeah,
so
make you
34, because that's how the line
So
Start with the letters, so you have the space.
She sent me so many times out of the class. Yeah, I saw.
34 is on the front.
I mean, she was talking outside, yeah.
34.
She's like, quit making fun of Morgan. I was like, what?
No.
Okay, we still have plus minus.
the other
He's not anything.
Yeah.
I know it's plus minus.
But she was like this, she's like, I'll go.
Well, okay, just type in that entire square right
I
So
did that.
just-
Weren't you there?
Yeah.
Hey,
Straight
go.
as that.
How did I do this wrong?
Well, let's go over it. Let's go over this one.
Oh,
I was right back in and I started laughing. So I was like, come on, because you know, you couldn't
it's
read.
literally just numbers.
Me and Curtis started laughing because it's hard. It's not funny. It's not like it's fun. That's so funny. I started laughing and like I guess she didn't hear it. Kind of loud.
Oh, okay.
Like,
The whole square root is 76.
get out of my class.
So you don't do 76 divided by
I was
this.
like, oh, she got caught.
So it's going to be 34 plus 76. 34 minus 76.
Oh, okay. That makes sense.
Mr. Donkey, Mr. Donkey, Mr. Donkey.
Okay, I think the whole class is doing fine with this.
Oh, maybe.
No, maybe.
I
I think I need help.
Oh,
I just need to
I just-
Alright, we're going over it. We're going over it.
I can actually do homework.
Let's see, I can take it. It's probably.
Because of mother.
Oh, check that out. See what you got.
He did. No. She threatened everything with me.
Alright, so let's go through and get this filled in. So, Kinsey, start us off. What's it going to look like when I start filling in numbers?
Negative 16. No, mine, yeah.
Are you on the right
Oh
one?
no, I'm on the wrong one.
Yeah.
Negative 30.
Yep. And then plus minus what?
Square root over negative 34 minus 4 times 15 times negative
And then everything is divided by?
2.
Oh, but I didn't hit the wire once my hand started.
Alright, so we got everything filled in. Let's actually, let me double check first.
It's right.
Remember, when you do this,
Look, you gotta believe in your students.
I was like, I ain't going to.
Alright, so when I go through and, let's see.
Just call Tyson. He's not paying attention.
Alright, Greg. Okay, we're gonna go through and solve it, right? What's negative? Negative 34.
I need that back.
Okay, positive 34. And then I got plus and minus. And then what's under the bottom right here?
2 times.
No.
Yeah, 15, which is.
Just decided to notice that.
And nobody's in that desk.
No.
Magi, what do I get when I calculate the square root?
A lot. 27. No, I'm just kidding.
No.
You guys know what that's off of?
Also no. Did you do this or what?
Yeah, I did it.
Then just put, what did you put on your paper?
I don't know if it's right, I don't wanna say it.
Just say it.
Do it. Just do it.
Is it 76?
Yes.
I used my.
Oh no.
And we get
And
76
that's
when you
why I
plug in
said
the entire
box.
square root. So 34 plus minus 76 divided by 30. So what are we doing next? Where's that desk?
What the?
Jace, what am I doing next?
You're gonna do 34 plus
Yeah, I want
76
you, man.
5 by 30. Get that 34 minus 76 5 by 30. You're
Good.
gonna solve those.
Yep.
How'd you get
Wait,
34?
Goki.
It's up
Yeah,
there.
you put
It's in the
34.
box.
Where?
The top.
What?
What you started with.
Talking about the bottom. What are you
You said
dividing by? You put
34
a 30.
Oh, okay.
Oh, that's why I got one.
That's
more
a strike,
thing.
goalkeeper.
No, man. You're
That's
gonna get
40,
obnoxious if we don't have one
Goki.
for you.
You're 40.
Goki.
Yeah.
2 times 15 is 30.
Oh, that's what I.
Oh my god, yeah, you're.
Alright, the wrong one.
Yeah.
I got it now. I got it. Alright, for our first one, what do we get? Ivory. For the 34 plus 76 divided by 34.
What's up,
3.6 repeating.
Nerd alert.
What was it?
3.6 repeating.
Mhm. Or if you rounded it, it would be 3.7, which is fine. I said you could round. Technically, 3.6 repeating is more correct, but I'll let it slide. Beto, what'd you get for the 34 minus part?
Hey, you heard what she call me? She
Come on,
called
man.
me.
Calm
Call
down.
me a lazy donkey butt.
Donkey butt.
Yeah.
Or just a regular
I didn't write that down.
Your second answer? You didn't write that?
Well, no, I didn't write the 34 minus. I just go.
No, just what's the whole thing?
I don't need mine yet.
Yeah, just give me the whole answer.
Mine must not taste good.
Negative 42 is what I got.
Divided by 30.
I wouldn't know. I've never tried it. What did you get? You think it's okay?
Yes, they're fine.
Or 1.6 repeating.
Now I'm gonna stretch my neck.
Or you can round it to 1.7. That's fine.
What? How'd you get 1.6?
What? Alright, that's 30. Alright, fine. 34 minus 76 divided by 32.
I put 1.6.
Oh, no.
Because I'm roasting you. I'm not.
Maybe I did it wrong. Let me see.
I'm using this weapon of mass destruction.
Wait.
Negative 42.
Yeah, hang on. I think I agree with
by
Jace.
30. Ah, that's why, Goki. I didn't use a negative.
Oh.
I think they're solid because you just eat them away. Like every time they try to grill, you just eat them back down.
No, this is a 1.4, not 1.6.
Yeah, that's
Yeah, it's 1.4.
Yeah, that's what I got.
Yeah, buddy.
Yeah. 1.4.
Ashkadad.
And negative, actually negative 1.4.
You got salt.
Yeah. Negative 1.4.
Hey, that's what I got.
There we go.
Oh my god.
Alright, good. You guys did good. Okay, so let me think. We're going to
Skip it.
Let's just do the.
Skip it.
I don't know. I want to make you guys mad.
Hey, guys doing perfectly fine with
Why
this.
you don't make us mad?
'Cause
Bro,
it's
I
fun.
really want to do this one. Hopefully you don't skip
Actually,
it.
so we're gonna go over this real quick. We're not gonna do the whole thing. We're just gonna do one piece. So on this one, the only thing you need to do with your quadratic equation, you need to make sure it equals 0 first. So this one equals 10.
Minus 10.
So we're gonna minus 10 on both sides to make it equal 0. So I would minus 10 on both sides. I get 30w squared minus 17w minus 21 equals 0. And now you quadratic equation it. So you have your A, your B, and your C is negative 21.
Okay.
Can't believe you guys didn't know that.
Alright, start on your exit ticket. If you haven't yet, I will turn on Scrative. And then your homework I will put on Google Classroom. Not very long because these problems are kind of time consuming.
So it is gonna be long.